So let's talk about where to go stargazing. So there are several things you need to take into account. First of all, we've got physical safety. This is non-negotiable. You're better off not going stargazing rather than taking certain risks. We've got light pollution, which is something we need to consider. We've got weather, the moon phase, and events you may want to see or avoid, and latitudes to consider as well. Let's talk physical safety. So, first of all, no one should be out at night by themselves in a dark area that is easily accessible by other people. You don't know who's around, it's not safe. So, if you have a private garden, is it safe and secure? Does it have high fences? Are all the gates locked, etc.? Or can other people access it? Really have a good look in daylight to check that it is safe, it's secure, that the bits that should be locked are locked, even if you think you're in a really safe location. Always double check. Always let someone know where you are, that you're outside, that you're going to be outside, and that you're safe. Never alone in a public place. So if you're somewhere that other people can access, you should never be alone. It's not just a case of other people could be around that could cause you harm. You may also have a medical emergency or event that no one would know about and no one can call an ambulance for you. So really consider not being alone in a public place. That being said, there are ways that you can find people to go stargazing with. So you can join astronomical societies. There are plenty of them, certainly around the UK and around Europe. I'm pretty sure in most places there is going to be an astronomical society somewhere around. I recommend getting to know them before you meet with them in the dark the first time. There's also star parties, which are large gatherings of people with their telescopes and their cameras. And then, of course, some people just turning up to enjoy the atmosphere. Everyone is camping and everyone spends the night under the stars, and they can be pretty special events. So it's really important to place your physical safety first. Always be aware of your surroundings and who you're with. So, even if you're on your own in a secure place like your own back garden and everything's locked and you've got high fences, don't have noise cancelling headphones on. Be aware of what's around you. Um, because even things like wildlife that can get into your garden could cause you harm, and you may have no idea it's there, or you might not hear a fire alarm going off somewhere in the distance. So it's really important to be super aware of your surroundings and be aware of who you're with. Don't go stargazing even in a public place as a first date with someone you've never met before. So just think it through. The next thing to consider is light pollution. So, if you think about maybe when you've been in a room and someone is in front of the window, they're facing you, they're talking to you, and they've got bright sunlight coming through the window, and they kind of look like they're in shadow, you can't make out any features on their face. That is light pollution. And because we've got so much lighting on Earth now, very few places have proper dark skies. So if you look at this image of Europe, and there's bits of North Africa there as well, you can see how much is lit up at night. And yes, it looks super pretty, but it means that we're accessing and seeing less of the sky. So, unfortunately, in the UK where I am, there really aren't that many dark places. There's a few sort of dark sky reserves, but they're not as impressive as, say, the dark sky in Chile. So, light pollution is categorized on the Bortle class scale. So, 1 being the clearest skies, and 9 being the most light polluted skies. So, I'm sort of on the 4-5 border. So, I can see things, and you can, with astrophotography, still pick up things in the more heavily polluted skies because you can layer images. But what you will see with the naked eye is obviously going to be less. And on top of the overall sort of background amount of light, you also have the local light. So, if, for example, you're in a dark field, but there is a massive floodlight next to you because they keep the floodlight there for the football pitch all the time, you are going to get some obscuring from that. Now, you can put your hand up over that floodlight, obviously not over the actual floodlight itself, but over the bit that's coming towards your eyes, and you will notice more stars appear in the sky. But obviously, being away from that floodlight to start with would be more helpful. So there is the light pollution website that will give you, if you point a location, it will give you the Bortle scale for that, and it also has like a heat map of various places, so you can see if it's red that it's going to be more light polluted, and green is less light polluted. I will pop the link below. But do check out the Bortle class. Sometimes you will be able to travel say an hour and be within somewhere that's got a much less light polluted sky. So for some people, they will do their stargazing always an hour away from home because an hour isn't that far for the amount of improvement that they get. Other people, they know that they would have to travel a long way to get any kind of clear sky, so they make do with what they've got. That's fine. You just need to do the best within the limits that are available to you. So the next thing to think about is clouds. So obviously, if it's raining or snowing, there's going to be clouds in the way. You're not going to see the sky at all. You may also have clouds when it's not raining, and that can be very frustrating, especially if you haven't had a clear night in a long time. And being in a rainy country myself, it can be very frustrating. So I will go out even when there's a full moon because there is a problem with clouds. That being said, on the clearest of winter nights, we can have some beautiful, pristine skies. So bear in mind, the colder it is, it's cold because there's less cloud cover. So you should see more. Atmospheric distortion. So this is more in heat conditions. The atmosphere will sort of appear to wiggle in front of you. So when a star is twinkling, it's either dust passing in front of the star or more likely atmospheric distortion causing that twinkle. And if you see the big observatory domes, which look like they've got lightsabers coming out of them, that is sort of like noise cancelling for telescopes. So what it's doing is it's measuring the distortion of the atmosphere, and it's moving one of the mirrors and changing the shape of it to sort of counteract that, and you get a clearer image. So it's pretty amazing what optics can do to make up for atmospheric distortion. But with just us and our eyes, we have to bear in mind that it makes stars twinkle, which looks pretty. Um, but it also means that it can make things look a bit blurry as well. And also bear in mind the clearest weather is usually the coldest weather. So it's really important to keep warm, which I've mentioned before, but plenty of layers that you can add or take away from is the way to go. The moon phases. So again, the moon creates light pollution essentially. It stops us from seeing the things around it that are more faint. So the more moon that is visible, the more light it's giving off. You can still see a lot. You can still see some of the more fainter objects when the moon is out, if you know where you're looking and it's still a clear sky. But sometimes it can cause real problems. So, for astronomers, it can cause massive problems with the faintest of galaxies. But for us looking out and stargazing, we can still see a lot. And you can also see if you look at the two outer images of the moon on this slide, you can see where the terminator is, that line between the light and the dark. You can see a lot more texture and craters available than you could um, when you have the full moon. So the moon itself can be really interesting, and it's got so many subtle changes. Even on the same night, it can change a fair bit. So the moon, yes, it's interesting, but it can cause problems with observing fainter objects. So depending on what you want to look at, it may or may not be a problem. If unsure, the best stargazing nights are when you've got a dark moon and a few days either side. So look for the new moon or the dark moon and try and plan it around that week and keep an eye on the weather. And then there are other events as well that you might want to take into account. So you might want to see a conjunction or an eclipse or an occultation or satellite launches. So you definitely want to be out, even if it's full moon and the weather's a bit inclement. But then there are going to be other events like firework events and bonfire nights and laser shows. And if you've got like a big sporting event or music event with a large outdoor arena and there's floodlights going off and all sorts and sort of like the bat signal type lights, you're really going to struggle to see or observe much at all. So, if you really want to observe something on that night, so say, for example, there was an amazing conjunction that was going to happen, and you live near a massive concert venue that's going to be having fireworks and laser shows, you're probably going to want to stay somewhere else in order to observe that event. And then certain constellations are only available at certain latitudes at certain times of the year. So you need to bear that in mind too. So you need to take into account safety first, always safety, light pollution, the weather, the moon, and other environmental factors. And that should help you plan when you want to go stargazing. So, usually for me, I look at when it's a new moon and look for a clear night within that sort of week. So, a few days either side. That is my optimal stargazing time.